Canals were made for work, hard, grinding work. Men, women and children living and sometimes dying in the tiny, cramped conditions of a narrowboat's back cabin. Cramped, but by day surrounded by the water, the green of the plants, the sometimes blue of the sky. Their world produced the unique, madly colourful roses and castles artwork that adorned their boats. Images merge, dreams blur. To help make some of the music we hear today, the children of Etruria and Cheddleton and grown-ups of Middleport Pottery were asked to write what they thought about canals. They mostly censored out the hard graft. They floated tranquilly in the gentle rural idyll of a stroll along the towpath or a 3-mile-an-hour puttering potter in a boat. Schemer Brindley wrestled with water all his life, but it got him in the end. Not with its mighty power, no tsunamis, whirlpools, cataracts, just an insidious shower of rain while surveying the Calden Canal at Frogall, followed by a night in a damp bed in a pub in Ibstons. He caught a cold, and that was it. He wasn't a fit man by then. Overwork had weakened him. Oh, but what work, what achievements! An epitaph of James Brindley from the Chester Courant of December the 1st, 1772. You will notice that they didn't pronounce words in 18th century English and Cheshire as we do now. And in case you're unfamiliar with the word, a soff, which is usually spelled S-O-U-G-H, but pronounced S-O-F-F, a soff, is a tunnel which is cut to carry wastewater out of a mine. And draining the aptly named Wet Earth Mine in Clifton near Manchester was what made young Brindley's name as an engineer. And it was siphoning soff that made them say that Brindley can make water run uphill. James Brindley lies amongst these rocks. He made canals, bridges, locks. To convey water, he made tunnels for barges, boats, and air vessels. He erected several banks, mills, pumps, machines with wheels and cranks. He was famous to invent engines, calculated for working mines. He knew water, its weight, its strength, turned brooks, made softs to a great length. While he used the miner's blast, he stopped currents from running too fast. There ne'er was paid such attention as he did to navigation. But while busy with pit or well, his spirit sunk below level. And when too late, his doctor found water had sent him to the ground. dig his grave with a silver spade, lower him down on a golden chain. Brindley's navvies carried on after his death, not with silver, but with iron spades. Great engineers cut canals who had started working as humble chainmen, assisting Brindley in his surveying, well, not with golden chains, but iron chains used for measuring lengths across the ground. Thomas Carlyle, the Scottish philosopher, had this to say of the great man. The English are a dumb people. Now they can do great acts, but not describe them. Whatsoever a strength the man had in him will be written in the work he does. The rugged Brindley has little to see for himself. He has chained seas together. His ships do visibly float over valleys and invisibly through the hearts of mountains. The Mersey and the Thames, the Humber and the Severn have shaken hands. A few weeks after his death, a new section of the Trent and Mersey was opened. A letter writer from Burslem described the scene. Our canal was filled with water a few days ago. A temporary wharf was built, and yesterday, for the first time, a boat was brought up into it. Every part of the boat was adorned with festoons of flowers. With an excellent band of music, it put us in mind of the famous procession of Cleopatra. The bank on each side was covered for miles with innumerable crowds of joyful spectators whose shouts with ringing of bells and discharges of cannon seemed to rend the air. A solemn goblet was drunk to the immortal memory of our lamented engineer, the late Mr. Brindley, who is now supposed to preside as a guardian genius over our canal. Samuel Smiles, in his biography of Brindley, tells the story of Brindley's famous last words. Well, it's probably untrue, but who knows? As he lay dying in his bed at Turnhurst Hall near Tunstall, some men came to him, worried by a leak in a canal they were cutting. "Puddle it," he said. "But we've already puddled it," they said. "Well, puddle it again," croaked Brindley feebly. And that was it.
Oh, Brindley now is dead and gone, his face we'll see no more. He slipped his ropes and set his course for some far distant shore. He caught his death with cold one day in a cold shower of rain. And how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? And how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? He made the water flow uphill and brought it gently down, but water got him in the end and laid him in the ground. He brought it down the train, it learned the gratitude of men. And how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? Because how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? His waves they lie through forests and rest like crystal fountains. His boats fly over valleys and through the hearts of mountains. He built his castles in the air and on the raging main. Because how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? Because how'd you do, and how'd you do, and how'd you do again? And salt advises Steamer Jem lay dying in his bed. We've got the leak, what shall we do? Well, puddle it, he said. We've puddled it already, said those very worried men. Well, puddle it, and puddle it, and puddle it again. Well, puddle it, and puddle it, and puddle it again.
Just 250 years ago, on July 26, 1766, Josiah Wedgwood and James Brindley were together. Just 1 year after their planned meeting in the Burslem Leopard, they cut the first sod of the Trent and Mersey Canal at Brown Hills, just north of Burslem. With a silver spade, Wedgwood cut a square of turf, Brindley put it in a wheelbarrow and pushed it back to Burslem, where they parted mightily The drink and the music flowed. They had dug a hole and found the future. Their personal futures were obvious. Brindley dug more canals. Wedgwood immediately bought a stretch of prime land on either side of the canal's proposed route and made a fortune. He put a factory down by the canal and a house on the high ground. If you live in the region, you'll probably know that bit of land, now mostly described as Festival Park. The Bet 365 building stands on Wedgwood's factory, which once filled the land with wonderful pottery, and his old house now boasts the very long title of Best Western Stoke-on-Trent Moat House Hotel. Times change, times change. Britain had boomed as the canals made the transport of goods cheap and safe. But then steam power took over, and then the lorries. By the 1950s, canals were the past. Disease-filled ditches, dead dogs floating. Some canals were filled in, buildings sat on them, like Stoke-on-Trent Civic Centre or Stoke Sainsbury's. Canals that remained became backdrops for black and white movies about the north. Or so it seemed to most.